Let me take a moment to talk to you about my friend Zoya's creative classroom. So, Miss Zoya's classroom begins our school year with some collaborative and norm building activities. The first thing that she does is she renames her class with their help. The grade 7-8 class gets together and they come up with an identity or a name for themselves. And then Miss Zoya will talk with the other teachers, and from that point on, they have a new identity. Sometimes it could be as simple as grade 8 amazing. After this, she begins a series of collaborative team building activities, kind of like icebreakers. One such activity involves using an elastic with 4 strings off of it, where 4 individuals in the classroom each have to manipulate that string to pick up a cup and stack it on another cup and make a tower of cups. She often does this after she's talked to the kids about non-negotiable norms. Those non-negotiable norms are things that the kids absolutely need to feel emotionally safe and be able to trust one another. And then they practice them through those collaborative building activities. Now, that's not the only thing that she does for establishing culture in her classroom. She does a lot of different things, including creating many opportunities for students to have their voice heard. So she encourages students to challenge ideas. She encourages students to have say over how they express their knowledge and their answers. There's always choice in assignments and sometimes even in assessments. The classroom's physical space itself is pretty flexible. The seating itself changes depending on what they're doing in the class. If they're doing something that requires more collaborative activities or perhaps designing and building, the class will be set up in tables, spread out across the room for different functions. Perhaps one is a group where kids are manipulating crafts. Another is a group where kids are utilizing technology. Sometimes the classroom will even be set up with desks all arranged in a giant rectangle where kids can sit and converse with one another with the classroom teacher's help, Miss Zoya, to build upon their knowledge upon each other. So it really depends. There aren't rows, and there definitely is not assigned seating. So that kind of thing in her class really helps the students feel like it's not Miss Zoya's class, it's all of their class together. And that goes a long way to building that kind of culture. When it comes to teaching and learning strategies, Miss Zoya does a very good job of trying to bring out the best of the students, both critical and creative thinking. She asks them to think about things on a large scale, make the question big, make it global. And then if that seems too difficult to answer, the question too big, like how do we solve world hunger, for example, then she asks them to break it into its smaller parts, make it more specific. Well, what kinds of hunger issues do we have in this country as related to that country? Are they the same? Are they different? Do the strategies that work when we address hunger issues in this country, would they necessarily fit with another country? And then we kind of get at the roots of all of the different problems that way by breaking it down. Another thing she's always encouraged her students to do is look at multiple perspectives. It's really important to step outside of yourself. And this goes a long way with her culture building environment at the beginning of the year too, is to establish those kinds of risk-taking, to be open-minded, and to be empathetic. This kind of teaching strategy or instructional strategy really helps students to foster and develop those skills. And they do it by practicing being in someone else's shoes. So when you're tackling an issue like homelessness, it's very easy to perhaps be judgmental or to come up with a single simple response answer to what you think a problem may be. So somebody doesn't have a job, they don't have any money, so they're homeless. But there are so many more complex factors there. But sometimes it's hard to see if you're not in their shoes. So sometimes that's a lot of time it's a great strategy to utilize. A lot of times too, she really focuses on questions. So instead of her giving the kids questions, she helps them develop their own questions. And we like the 5 questions. We like the what, who, where, when, how, why. We enjoy those questions very much, and it helps us get at the root of things, but also in the way we reframe our questions. Miss Zoya really wants to take a look at the wording that we choose, right? When we are asking questions about research, are we asking the questions that actually get the answers that we're trying to find? She also, which goes along with multiple perspectives, encourages the kids to smash assumptions. So we assume that things are the way they are. Well, let's just not look at it as black and white. Let's not assume that that's true. Let's smash our assumptions and let's look at it with fresh eyes. You know, it's almost, even with a grade 7 middle school student, she would like us to pull back, maybe even pull younger, look at it with fresh eyes, with young eyes, before we kind of develop these opinions or assumptions that we have. That's just a few of the strategies that she utilizes in her classroom. And there's many more. Assessment is also a strategy, actually, for teaching, and assessment as learning, assessment for learning are valuable tools for any teacher. Her use of assessment involves one-to-one conferences. That's a difficult time thing to do, but when it's necessary for a lot of students, it is. And those can be informal conversations. They don't always have to be a sit down, right? That engagement with the student can be brief, but it can be very valuable as long as it's specific and targeted to what the student needs. So sometimes if she can't do a one-to-one, she will do a group. If she notices that some of the students are having similar problems, she will pull them all together, have a conference with them, and address that one issue. Often starting by asking questions about why they responded this way, why did they think that, and trying to get them to uncover their answers for themselves, right? Other things she does is she co-creates success criteria with them. Often they'll have some sort of introductory lesson, and they'll go through and develop those sort of basic knowledge. And then once that's kind of occurred, then she starts to prompt them to think about, so how are we evaluated here? Given like these curriculum expectations, what are we looking for to demonstrate that we've mastered this information or we've mastered these skills? So they become a part of that. And because they're a part of the success criteria, quite often it translates into a checklist or a check brick or a rubric. And it's something that they feel they own because they help create it. And then that encourages self-assessment, but it also facilitates peer assessment because they created together, they actually understand what it means. So they're better able to provide more specific feedback. And also they try to keep it simple. Let's keep it to 3 or 4 expectations. That way students don't get overwhelmed. But most important of anything is taking a look at, observations, conversations, but products too. But it's that triangulation of data. It's not looking at one over another. We're not just looking at the final project. We're looking at the process through the project. So along specific steps of the way, Miss Zoya is doing that. Whether it's just by watching, whether it's in a knowledge building circle and listening to the students, whether it's a formal sit down, it's taking notes, or if it's putting that success criteria down on paper and just doing check marks. Yep, got it. Nope, not yet. And then providing that kind of assessment to the student to give them an opportunity to use the assessment to improve first before any kind of final evaluation or summative assessment. So that's just a little bit of a snapshot of Miss Zoya's classroom.